I love it. And I think we love it watching it because we can relate to it, you know. If you're just joining us, welcome to Crossroads. I'm Reed Robinette. I'm the senior pastor here. And all summer long, pretty much, we've been talking about epic fails. And we've been watching these same videos about people who had a picture of how it would go, and then it didn't turn out that way. And the reason, of course, that we've been showing that is because sometimes that's what life feels like. We have this picture of, I think this is the way it's going to work. And then oftentimes it doesn't look like what we thought it would look like. In fact, I would say that's one of the things that gets repeated to me more often than almost anything else, is people who share when we're talking about how life is going. They say something like this: I never imagined that it would be like this. I had a picture and it didn't turn out the way I thought it would. If that's you, and if you could relate to that, maybe not in your whole life, but maybe in one aspect of your life or one relationship that you're like, I never would have imagined that it would end up like this. I pictured this. I'm going to tell you why this morning. I'm going to tell you why it ended up looking the way it did. Now, I get not everything is cookie cutter, and sometimes things happen to us that we have no control over. I get that. Sometimes the things that happen are random. No one could have seen them coming. That's not what I'm talking about. Here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that we can look back in our lives and say, you know what? I can tell you exactly why that happened. It's because I made a choice. I made a stupid choice, and then this happened. And I hope I'm not the only one in the room that's ever made a stupid choice, because it'll be really uncomfortable for me if you look at me the whole time like you're looking at me right now. Like, well, that must happen to you, but never happened to me. Yeah, we sometimes, am I right? We look back and we go, wow, that was a really bad choice. And I can see how it's affecting my life. And so we're talking about wisdom because it's the ability to make wise choices, make better choices. There are some things in my life that I'm telling you, if I could go back, I would choose differently. Now, I'm not saying that God hasn't used that circumstance to give me things in my life that I wouldn't replace for anything. But I am saying, if I could have made a better choice, I would. And so in the future, if I could choose better, I would. And I bet you would too. And that's what wisdom allows you to do. And so the whole book of Proverbs has been saying, you can choose better, you can make better choices if you attain wisdom. So we're going to look at wisdom one more time and wrap it up this week. I'm going to start, if you have a Bible, in Proverbs chapter 30. Now, as James said earlier, Proverbs, most of it was written by King Solomon. And we're going to look at one, though, at the end of the book of Proverbs that was written by another guy. And you might know that Proverbs has 31 chapters, so we're almost all the way at the end of the book of Proverbs. But Proverbs 31 is all about understanding women, and I can't preach on that because I don't. So I'm going to just stick with 30, and you'll find somebody else to teach on Proverbs 31. Oh, maybe I'll do it someday. Anyway, here we go. Proverbs 30. The sayings of Agur, son of, I don't know how to pronounce that, an inspired utterance. Now, you might say, well, who is Agur? And the truth is, I don't know who Agur is. And in fact, there's some debate about who he is, but it's okay because it doesn't matter who he is. Because what I'm going to tell you is, I bet you can relate to him. I bet you there's some things that he's about to say that either you've said or you've thought. Let's watch. This man's utterance to Ithiel. I don't know who that is either. We're off to a good start, aren't we? You're like, does this guy know anything? Let's get to the point here. All right. Here's what Agur says. I am weary, God. Anybody relate to that? That's just me. Okay. But I can prevail. Surely I am only a brute, not a man. I do not have human understanding. He's like, I don't get people sometimes. He goes on. I have not learned wisdom, nor have I attained the knowledge of the Holy One. So what's he saying? This guy Agur is saying, look, I clearly am not there yet in terms of enough wisdom to make wise choices all the time. Now, that could be a good thing. And we left off last week saying that the beginning of the process from moving away from foolishness and towards wisdom is to understand that you're not there yet, that you have some wisdom to attain, to acquire before you would have all wisdom. So that could be a good thing. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying this. Okay, I don't have enough wisdom, so give it to me. Like, okay, lay it on me, God. I'm ready for you to zap me with some wisdom so I stop doing dumb things. I bet you've either thought that or prayed that or even said that. Okay, God, help me. Just dump it on me. Now, the problem is that's not the way it works. That's not the way that you acquire wisdom. And it turns out, wisdom's not like my shirt. Like last month, I did not have this shirt. And then I went and I got the shirt, and then I have the shirt. That's not the way wisdom works. But it turns out that there are some things that you can do repeatedly, day after day, over time, that eventually will transform you into the kind of person that makes wise choices. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to look at, in the book of Proverbs, some ingredients. I want to show you the instructions that are daily instructions for how to acquire wisdom. So basically, I'm going to tell you this. You want wisdom, and who doesn't? You can't get it today. But you can begin a process that will give it to you for a lifetime. So that's what we're going to learn. Okay, well, if I wanted to move in that direction, how would I start today? I'm going to tell you three things. They all have to do with walking. You'll see why in a second. I'm going to show you the instructions to walk the path, to not walk alone, and to walk with your Savior. All three, critical if you're going to move in the direction of attaining wisdom and making better choices. All right, number one. It says that we're to walk the path. If we were to turn to Proverbs chapter 2, we'll put it up on the screen here, because I want you to look at, as I'm reading these verses, and your job is to pick out the word that's repeated in every single verse. Ready? Proverbs 2, verse 9. It says, "Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path." And then it talks about people who stray, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways. Verse 15. Whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Verse 18. Surely her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. Verse 19. None, I did that every time, none who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteousness. What's the word? Path. Yeah. So it says 31 times in the book of Proverbs, walk the path. Walk the path. Over 700 times in the entire Bible, this picture is used for spiritual growth, of which attaining wisdom is part. That it happens by walking the path. Why does it use that? Why is that the picture? Why isn't it go through the door? Why isn't it pull the lever? Why isn't it check the box? Do you see that this idea of walking a path is descriptive of how acquiring wisdom happens? It happens as you display a long obedience in the same direction. That there are repeated actions based on the revealed truth of God, that if you do them every day, as boring and mundane and insignificant as they might seem at the time, the truth is that they lead to a place where you will begin to make wise choices. But you can't get there without going down the path. That's a fancy way of saying, how do you attain wisdom? One step at a time. How do you acquire the ability to make better choices? By walking the path on a daily basis. So what really makes you who you are is not the grandiose events of your life. It's actually the daily, repeated actions. In other words, you want me to tell you how you got to the place that you couldn't imagine? You got there one step at a time. That's how you got there. That's how we always get there. Now, you might push back and you go, nope. No, because it was that one thing. It was that one night. If I could take that back, everything would be different. It was that one choice. If I didn't, then that's the thing that made it all blow up. It was that one lie. If I just didn't tell that lie, it all would have been okay. And let me push back and say, here's the question. What got you to the point that that one step made such a big difference? All the other steps that led up to it, right? Just think with me for a second. So you made this one step that seems like it's the biggest deal because it's the thing that, like this. Well, what got you to here? I'll tell you. All of these. Right? You get there one step at a time. And so it is diagnosing and understanding that it's that part, that those choices that you make that allow you to move down the path. That's the way. So the answer to the question is, how did I get here? One step at a time. How will I get to wisdom? You walk the path. But you walk it for longer than you ever imagined you would have to. Right? Like, remember when you had little kids, or you were a little kid, and you'd go on a long trip, and as soon as you got out of the driveway, what would the little kid say? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How much longer? Are we there yet? And you're like the little kid with God. You're like, okay, walk the path. Am I there yet? My friend told me a story about his son. Who would do that? They would get out of the driveway, and he would start with the, are we there yet? And it drove him crazy. So he said, he devised a plan, and he gave his son a bag of quarters. And so he said, hey, we're going on this trip, and every time you ask me, are we there yet, or how much longer, you owe me a quarter. So you have to give me a quarter out of your little bag, and if you don't ask, then you get to keep all the money, right? So, sure enough, they barely get out of the driveway. And then, are we there yet? You owe me a quarter. So he takes the quarter out of the bag, gives it to his dad. And his dad said, I could see the little wheels turning in his little brain. He's looking at the quarter, looking at me, looking at the quarters. He never asked one more time for the entire 5 hours, are we there yet? Not once. But he asked incessantly, can I have my quarterback? 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 The whole time. So it didn't actually produce like the thing that he was hoping it was going to produce. So you're like the little kid, and so am I with God. So I want to make better choices. Okay, walk the path. Well, for how long? I feel like I should be finished by now. And the truth is that it's going to be probably much longer than you imagined. Now, a great description of that in the Bible is the people of Israel, the Israelites, when they were led out of Egypt. Remember that? Moses came and led them out of Egypt, the Red Sea and all that. They were slaves, and now they were free. And God was taking them to the promised land. Remember that? So God was taking them from Egypt to Jerusalem, basically. And that trip should take about 2 weeks. And do you know how long it took them? 40 years. 40 years. Can you imagine the are we there yet? In year 38? This should have taken 2 weeks. We're in year 38. Are we there yet? Why? John Ortberg says that it's because we follow the God of the roundabout way. That what he means is that God is not so interested in how long it takes for you to get from point A to point B in your life. He's way more interested in who you'll be when you get there. He's way more interested in what's happening in you than the speed of your journey. He wants to know, will you become the kind of person that God has built you to be by the time you get to point B? And that's the path that we're called to walk. It's long, and that makes it hard, but that's not the only thing that makes it hard. It's also hard because our culture, it screams at us that that's not the way to acquire things. In other words, that walking the path in pursuit of wisdom is completely countercultural. That we are in I can't speak for other ages, but we're in an age that we're sort of sold on the idea that you should be able to get anything immediately that you need, right? And so this walk the path business is like so out there in terms of what we hear on a daily basis. Bless you. Eugene Peterson is a thinker, a writer, and he wrote the Message version of the Bible. He's a really smart guy. And he said this about our cultural place. One aspect of our culture that is harmful to Christians is, now just think about all the things you could fill that in with. If you were going to say one thing about our culture that's harmful to your faith is, this is what he wrote. The assumption that anything worthwhile can be acquired at once. So that doesn't seem like that's the worst thing in the world. He said that's so destructive because that's not how we grow spiritually. That's not how we acquire wisdom. He goes on, so he says it's not difficult to get people interested in the gospel or even to make some kind of profession of faith. But it's extremely difficult to get them to move beyond their starting point. He said there's all kinds of interest in religious experience, but there's very little enthusiasm for patient acquisition of virtue. What's he saying? If you could lay some on me now, I'll sign up. But if you tell me I got to walk the path, I ain't got time for all that. But that's the way you get to wisdom. So he paints this picture. I love this word picture. He said, I feel like a lot of people, he was a pastor of a church actually in Bel Air, and he said, I feel like a lot of people in my church are like religious tourists. I love that picture. You know what a tourist is, right? A tourist is somebody who goes to places and they don't ever plan on staying and they just want to see all the cool stuff and then leave. Right? So you know what they look like, right? They look like this. They take out their camera, take pictures. And he said, that's what people do spiritually. You just show up and you want to be wowed and then you want to leave. And he said, then pastors, you're like the tour guide. You're just supposed to tell interesting stories at all the different places. And that's not it. He used another word. He said, the early church fathers, they used to say that we're pilgrims. We're sojourners. We're people on this long journey. And they would even go on these pilgrimages over long periods of time to remind themselves that what's happening to me spiritually looks like what I'm doing physically. That's so helpful. We don't do that anymore. So what would they do? They would do this. Right, left, right, left. And what they would remember is, what am I doing spiritually? Right, left, left. It's not these grandiose moments. It's the things that I do over time, all the time, that make me who I am. Now, what are you going to do? We're going to say, I'm going to keep being a tourist, or I'm going to walk the path. You say, well, okay, I'll walk the path. What do I need to do? I'm glad you asked, but I'm not going to tell you yet because we got 2 other instructions, but they're quicker than this one. Instruction number 2, the first one was walk the path. Second one was don't walk alone. Don't walk the path alone. Look at Proverbs 18:24. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Proverbs 12. The righteous, those on the right path, choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. What's it saying? It says there's a unique role for a friend relationship, that it's different than every other kind of relationship in terms of what we're talking about today. It's different than a romantic relationship. It's different than a family relationship. It's different than a civic relationship. You don't pick who your relatives are. You don't pick who you are in the same town with or neighborhood with. But you do choose your friends are the people that you surround yourself with. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're going to talk about relationships for the rest of the month, but let me at least say this. If you surround yourself with people who are walking in the opposite direction, you are not going to make it very far down the path that leads to wisdom. You're just not. And furthermore, if you try to walk alone down that path, you are not going to make it very far on your own. Because we are built to rely upon other people. It's as much as you want to be self-sufficient, God wired you to rely on other people. So friends, and what's a friend? A friend is somebody who's constant. You don't have to worry about whether they're going to be here on the next journey of the road. When it gets steep, they're not going to bail on you. A friend is somebody who cares about you. They're not just in it for themselves. A friend is somebody who's honest, speaks truth in love, but they'll say tough stuff, not with their own agenda, but because they love you. That's a friend. And the Proverbs are saying, if you're going to walk down the path, you got to have some of these people in your life. Now, some of you are going like, sure. Where do I find such a person? Like, I would love one of those. Where are they? Because I don't seem to find them in my life. Well, there's a lot of answers to that, but let me at least give you this. The one surefire way to not find them is to make that your goal, is to find them. Do you see what I mean? Like, if I just went around going, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? How about you? Will you be my friend? Will you be my, you'll be like, yeah, no, not so much. See, you know how friends are made? Maybe you don't. Here it is. Friends are made when you walk down the path with some other folks for long enough that you begin to go, oh, you too? Huh. Really? You feel like that too? I thought I was Really? That's your priority too? Wow. And all of a sudden, the folks that are walking down the path begin to form these relationships that are friends. They play a role that no one else can play in your life. Now, I'll tell you, how do you get there? You log some miles. I tell you, you know how I got my best friend? Literally, here's what I did not do. I didn't go up to him and go, will you be my best friend? Because I know him, and he would go, that's weird. Don't talk to me anymore. Take me out of your phone. And, that's not what we did. We literally logged miles together. We ran. We weren't best friends at the beginning. We logged some miles. I was thinking about this in between services. I remember we weren't great friends yet, but my dad had passed away, and he helped me to move my mom out of an apartment into our house. And I remember turning on a Billy Joel song, and we both started, I sound a little weird. We both started singing this Billy Joel song. And it was like, huh. Well, then we didn't think anything about it, but we go down the road a few more miles down the path, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, really? And that's my best friend. And how did I get him? Because we're going that we logged some miles together. So if you don't have any place in your life where you have surrounded yourself with some folks who are walking in the same direction as you, you won't find them. They're not just going to appear out of thin air. That's the way you find them. So don't miss that. Number one, you want to acquire wisdom? You got to walk the path. But second, don't try to walk it alone. Don't surround yourself with people who are going the other way. And don't walk it by yourself. Put some people around you that will allow you to create those friendships down the path. All right, last. So walk the path. Don't walk alone. Walk with your Savior. And I love this, that it comes back all the way back in Proverbs 30. After Agar has said, all right, look, I need some wisdom. I know obviously I'm lacking in that area. In verse 4 he says this. Who has gone up into heaven and come down? Whose hands have gathered up the wind? Who has wrapped up the waters in a cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What's his name? And what is the name of his son? Surely you know. What's he saying? Yeah. He goes, look, here's the way you start. You start with the one who made it. Who put the whole thing together? Because he probably has some insight into how it's supposed to work. So start there. Who has the master plan in his hands? And you know who that is. That's your creator. And so you've heard the story probably about Big Ben. You know Big Ben, not Roethlisberger, like the clock, right? It's almost football season. You're like, yes, I know Big Ben. Everybody gets all ramped up. The clock in England, in London, right? It's like one of the icons of the British capital there in London. And it's actually, Big Ben is actually the name of the bell, not the whole clock. But the story goes that toward the end of the 20th century, or the turn of the 20th century, the clock stopped bonging, you know, like bong, bong. And there was a panic in London. And they brought in all of the experts in clock making. And somebody told me what the name of that was, but I don't remember it. Steve, what's the name of that? Yeah, like what he said. All the big experts in watchmaking and clock making. And they couldn't fix it. They couldn't fix it. And the crowd that started to form every day to see if the great, icon of London was going to ring grew. And at the front of the line was this little old guy with a tool chest. Real old. And he offered his services. And some of you see where this is going. They said, no, we don't need your help. We got all the best. Until they didn't. Until they couldn't figure it out. Until they couldn't make heads or tails of the thing. And then somebody said, well, we should give the little old guy a shot. And he walked up into the clock. About half an hour later, bong, bong, Big Ben is ringing again. And they said, well, how in the world did he know how to do that? He's the guy who made the clock. He's the guy who built it in the first place. So of course he knows how to fix it. You can bring all the experts in the world in. So you know what in your life? You want to pursue wisdom? You got to start with this. This is what Agur says is, okay, well, who has the whole plan? Start there. And then it says, and who's his son? Now, I love that. This is 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus. And the scriptures are referring to the wisdom that only comes through the cross. It says, who's his son? And when Jesus showed up, he talked to his disciples about the way, about the path. And do you remember what the disciples said? Jesus, we don't know the way. And he goes, yeah, you do. I'm the way. That the path always goes through the cross. Always. He goes, just follow me. And you'll go. You'll know the way. So you can decide that you're going to start with the one who put the whole thing together, the maker, and you're going to follow his son, or you're going to try to figure out with all the experts your own way. One is wise, one is not. I'll let you figure out which one is which. So, all right, how do you get there? You walk the path. You don't walk alone. You walk with your Savior. Right, left, right, left. You want to know what those are? Here's what they are. Start here. Read your Bible and pray. That's so preacher speak, isn't it? You're like, really? Yeah, really. No, I'm not kidding. You're like, oh, I tried that. And I still did stupid stuff. You know what you're like? You're like the person who went out and ran one day and then said, look, it didn't work. I'm not in shape. And you'd be like, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You have to right, left, right. I'm not talking about you're going to get up and do an hour of Bible study every morning. Maybe that's the problem, is that's what you think you have to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But my guess is for most of us, that's not sustainable. You're not going to do that. So you get frustrated, you beat yourself up, Look, you just right, left. We have little plans out there, the journey or ventures, whatever it is, and you could just take one for free. Start reading. Or here's simpler than that. You want me to give you a Bible reading plan? Here you go. Start here. Just whatever day it is, right? It's the 6th today. Just turn to a book of the Bible in the New Testament, like in the back half, and find chapter 6. Or if it's tomorrow, find chapter 7. And just read something. Read it until it reveals something about you or something about God. And highlight it and say, God, teach me what this means today. Just do that. Do you know what that is? Right. Right. And then talk to God. Just pray. I'm not talking about, oh, thou most holiest of patrons of the bequeath unto me. I don't even know what bequeath means. That's not what it is. It's this. God, I'm anxious about this person I have to talk to today. Help me to know what to say. Boom. That's it. God, give me strength to stay on the path today. Please. Sometimes, my prayer these days? Help me and heal me. That's it. And you know what that is? Left. You know how you acquire wisdom? Right, left, right, left. For longer than you think you should have to. With some folks who are walking with you. Walking in view of the cross. So you can do that. You don't have to walk alone. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to make it as easy as possible to find some people that walk in the same direction as you. You can sign up for a group. You might think, those people are crazy. I'm not going to spend a year with them. We got you covered. We have a starting point group. That's only 8 weeks with crazy people. And you could bail after 8 weeks if they're too crazy. But you know what you're going to do when you start taking those steps, either into a group or a starting point class? You're going to begin to walk down the path with a few other folks who might end up, they're not all going to be your best friends, but you're going to find encouragement to keep going. I hope you'll do that. All right, I'm going to invite the band to come back up. We'll close here. And close this whole series by inviting you to respond in this way. We're going to sing this song. And the words to the song are, here's my heart, God. That's a good start. Here's my heart. If you've never said that to God, it's a good morning to start. Here's my heart. Speak truth. Tell me what's true. Because that's what I need to hear this morning. Let's pray. Father, thanks for being patient with people like me. Thank you for meeting us right where we are on the path, whether this is step 1 or we've been at it for a while and we're stuck in a ditch or we're humming along. Thank you that you meet us and love us right where we are this morning. I pray that you convince every heart in the room of that truth.